Hey you, and before we begin hunting a killer in this old video, I would like to let you know that this video is sponsored by Hunt-A-Killer. Hunt-A-Killer is a subscription service. You play a private detective tasked with solving a fictional crime. Every month, you get sent a box of evidence, comprised of video, audio interviews, autopsy reports, photos, and other bits and pieces of evidence. Your goal in this is to analyze those documents, narrow down your list of suspects as the case unfolds, and catch the real killer. They sent me a season, and honestly, I enjoy the hell of it. Just staying in for hours and hours at a time, debating the findings, going through every little last piece of evidence for any clues that might seem, inconsequential, but will come up again later. And you have to actually use quite a lot of real-world knowledge at times, so prepare to use the old noodle. For example, the case I'm working on right now is set in the 20s, so it gives a whole new spin to it. And one of these people, I suspect, is who I'm hunting. To get 20% off your first box, please visit huntakiller.com/thatchapter and use code CHAPTER. Also, part of the proceeds go to the Cold Case Foundation, an organization that works to bring justice and restoration to cold cases. Pretty relevant to what we talk about. So once again, that's huntakiller.com/thatchapter and use code CHAPTER at checkout for 20% off your first box. If you like true crime, you will love a true crime mystery to solve. So thank you so much to Hunt-A-Killer for sponsoring this old video. Now let's do just that. Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video we're going to talk about a soldier named Kelli Bordeaux and what happened when she disappeared. In 2012, Private First Class Kelli Bordeaux was stationed in Fort Bragg, Fayetteville, North Carolina. And then she disappeared. But see, after the police gave up on the search, a private eye didn't. And he ended up discovering the truth using some pretty unconventional means. Let's give it a go. Kelli Bordeaux was born in December 1988. She grew up in Florida, St. Cloud to be precise, the holiest of clouds, and enlisted in the US Army when she was 22 in 2011. After she completed the Yale basic training, she was off to North Carolina, where she would train as a medic, being assigned to the 601st Area Support Medical Company, 261st Multifunctional Medical Battalion, 44th Medical Brigade, as a health service specialist. In fact, she was loving it, planning on a career in the military. Now, before she signed up back in 2010, Kelli Bordeaux got married to a fella named Mike Bordeaux. Now that marriage would get a little rocky, they would separate, but when Kelli moved to North Carolina, she thought, maybe let's give it just one more try, last chance saloon, catch my drift. Mike moved from Florida to North Carolina, and they gave it a go. But it was, like pissing in the wind. Mike would eventually move back to Florida after 3 months. And so, someone Kelli had been seeing while she was separated from her husband Mike, a guy named Justin Thompson, well, she started seeing him again, and things started to get more serious. He had given her the space she needed when she wanted to give her marriage another shot. But when Mike got the boot, or gave himself one, Justin, who was in there, like swimwear. Justin was planning to move in with her in North Carolina, as he still lived in Florida at the time. So, April 2012 came along, and Justin popped up to North Carolina to have a go at the place, and see what the scale was about moving in. One night when they were hanging out, they went to the local, a dive bar named Froggy Bottoms. What does come in and get your frog on even mean? So, they went in there, had a few sups, got chatting with the natives, and then, shortly after, Justin, he went back to Florida to gather his shit up to move back. He said he would be back in 2 weeks, half a month, shitload of hours. So, while Justin was back in Florida gathering up all his stuff, the 13th, Friday the 13th of April came along. And Kelli Bordeaux, having a bit of a thirst, decided to go to Froggy Bottoms for a few sups. She was planning on heading alone, sent this selfie to her sister, was texting Justin, and then was never heard from again. Well, that's not true. She was texting Justin throughout the night, and then at 1:30 in the AM, she texted him, "Got home safe, I'm going to bed, I'm tired and drunk, call me tomorrow." And that, really, was it. Justin, upon reading this message, was like, it's kind of a weird thing for Kelli to send him. Like, why would she send him it? She wasn't usually like sending him stuff when she got home. The fact that she said, "got home safe," like, why would you need to mention that? Unless you didn't get home safe. He tried calling her, but her phone was dead. The next morning, the silence was deafening for Justin, and worry and dread just begins to mount. On Sunday, he called the Fayetteville Police Department to try and report her missing, to have them go and have a look for her. However, they wouldn't let him report her missing, as it was only family members who had enough information. Only family members could report her missing, which makes sense. Not. Then he called Fort Bragg, where she worked, to see if they knew anything, and they replied she never showed up. And so the search begins. Army and police then finally get to Kelli Bordeaux's place, and they find nothing. Her apartment is empty, no sign of her. And so a missing persons investigation began. Kelli's family was notified, her estranged husband Mike Bordeaux was contacted, and the search begins. But it seemed like she had just vanished.
Tonight, the whereabouts of 23-year-old private first class Kelli Bordeaux are a mystery.
With every minute that passes, her family becomes more and more anxious. They want her to come home. Her husband was here along with her sister. Other family members spent much of the day here at the Fayetteville Police Department speaking with investigators. She lived here in Fayetteville with her husband, a soldier, a wife, a sister, a friend, and everyone who knew her. They say this is so out of ordinary, out of character, and that's why they're concerned tonight.
Her family, Mike, Justin, they all arrived in Fayetteville to begin the search. This was actually moved swiftly to a assumed homicide, as Kelli was just not the kind to run off. She always checked in with work, with her friends, with family. The search, it was huge. It seemed that nearly everyone in the area, over 600 people, got involved in trying to find Kelli, or any clues at all.
Fayetteville police say more than 600 people showed up for this search. This is the area where Kelli Bordeaux lives, her home about a half-mile from the bar where she was last seen. So far, searchers have turned up no clues. Most everyone out here never met the 23-year-old, but everyone out here feels a kinship to her, and everyone out here feels the need to help.
And so the police began looking into those who knew her, especially her estranged husband, Mike Bordeaux. He was pleading on the TV.
Please let her come home.
Now her husband is speaking out.
She was a dedicated soldier, a dedicated wife.
Michael Bordeaux says he hadn't seen his wife for 10 days before she vanished. But contrary to reports he'd moved out, he denies they were estranged, saying he was just visiting his father in Florida.
We were married. We weren't getting a divorce. We were together. We love each other. We love each other a lot.
But he would tell the investigators that things between the two of them were not good. It seemed that Kelli was intent on divorcing him. Obviously, she had moved on, but Mike, he wasn't too keen on the idea. He quickly became suspect numero uno, though he insisted he was in Florida the day she disappeared. Also, like in so many cases, it's nearly always an angry, jealous spouse or partner or lover or whatever. Justin Thompson, her boyfriend, was also in the police crosshairs.
She joined the military to make her family proud.
Her disappearance is making her family worried. The 23-year-old private first class was last seen leaving this bar, Froggy Bottoms on Ramsey Road, early Saturday morning. Fort Bragg officials reported her missing after she failed to show up for duty Monday.
We believe that she may be in danger.
But no specific details are being released tonight. Police aren't saying who she was with, how she got there, where they believe she may be, nothing.
No,
Kelli's family in town from Florida. Her sister says she'll be here
until Kelli comes home.
And she's hopeful that it'll be soon and safe. Her message to the person responsible for her disappearance?
Please give her back. Sorry. I just, please just return my sister.
All right, take a look at your screen.
Your family loves you, your friends love you, your battle buddies love you. And to those who are responsible for this, we're going to find you too.
And so hours and days went by, and like, nearly every single missing persons case, the chances of finding her were decreasing bit by bit. Now, both Justin and Mike were confirmed to be in Florida when she was last seen known to be alive. So, not them. But then Justin told the police something interesting that had happened when he had been in Fayetteville, a week before. She vanished. They'd gone to that Froggy Bottoms bar and met a bartender and were yapping away to him all night. Bartender's name was Nicholas Hulbert. He was hanging out with them most of the night, sitting and drinking with them even. Though Justin thought he gave off a weird vibe. He got Kelli's number off her, and Justin and Kelli then left. Justin told the police that the night she was last seen when she went out to the bar, she had gotten a lift with this Nicholas. Now, she did make it to the bar. She was seen there drinking and playing pool, and she was texting Justin before maybe someone else was texting Justin. And so the lead detectives decided might be worth their time to speak with old Nicky. And when they did, it turned out he was womp down on his luck. He was living behind the bar, in the woods, out of his car, in like a tent. Speaking with him brought up, jack shit though. When they brought him in for a formal interview, nothing. He was very cooperative, helpful.
Since Friday night, no contact with her whatsoever. You don't know where she's at. Well, what do you know about her?
Nothing really for 6 hours altogether.
Down in the car, I need to know about that.
No, I did not.
Not even touched her.
No.
He told them he'd been with her that night and dropped her off in the wee morning hours, but that was it. And so they let him go. Didn't do anything wrong, and was helpful. And he, even though he was pretty high up on their persons of interest list, he was getting involved in the search. He was helping out as much as anyone could. He was even on TV.
Tell him I'm grieving too, because she seemed like a really nice and cool person. And I hate that she's missing. Around 1:30, she told me, she's like, I'm tired, I want to go home. I said, okay, so we got in the car, and as soon as I pulled into Meadowbrook, she said, you can stop right here and let me out, I'll walk.
His person of interest status grew, though, however. Not only was he the last person to see her alive, he also was a sex offender. She was 5 years old, and he served 5 years in prison. Only 5 years, what the fuck? And although he was suspect number one, they had nothing on him other than, seems like something he'd do. But they did find out he hadn't registered properly on the sex offenders register. As this son of a bitch, he had no fixed address, and a registered sex offender needs one. So they could arrest him for that, maybe put the squeeze on him. Maybe he would spill something in jail. They questioned him a good few times.
Police have now questioned for a third time a registered sex offender seen with Kelli that night. Nicholas Hulbert worked at the bar, which has since closed, and told police he gave Kelli a ride to her apartment. He hasn't been called a suspect, but remains in a county jail for failing to report his address to authorities.
I believe that he has very valuable information as to where she's at.
But ultimately got nothing out of him, and Nicky eventually stopped talking to the police. And the search for Kelli continued, winding down with every day and week that passed, as it seemed like nothing would ever be found. A $25,000 reward would be offered, but nothing. However, little did the police know that someone else had taken an interest in the disappearance of Kelli Bordeaux ever since seeing it reported on the news. A private detective named David Marshburn. He worked on such cases we talked about here, like Gannon Stouck and Dior Kunz Jr. As the months passed, spring turned to summer, turned to autumn, he was still out there, long after everyone else had given up, looking for Kelli in the woods of North Carolina. No one knew, not the police, not the family. He was out there of his own accord. When he saw that interview of Nicholas Hulbert on the telly, he knew he was lying. He knew Nicholas Hulbert had something to do with what happened to her. And he thought, once he gets out of jail, he might have more luck than the police learning something from him. David Marshburn was convinced she was buried out there in the woods near Froggy Bottoms. But, There's a lot of woods. He was out there for months with himself, an assistant, and dog, searching. In 2013, Nick was released out of jail, and who should be waiting for him? Oh, Dave Marshburn, pleased to meet you. He contacted Nick the day he was out of prison and asked him for help. I'm looking for her. I need your help. You know, come on, I don't think you did anything to her. But you know what? You help me find her, it'll clear your name. And so Nick was like, sure. And so, over the next few months, a beautiful friendship would blossom, with David hoping Nick would eventually spill the beans. He wasn't terribly forthcoming though. David was working on him the entire time. He would give him odd jobs, give him money, buy him beer, buy him cigarettes, drive him wherever he needed him to go. He even once brought Nick a fake plea bargain agreement he had printed in his office that if he just admitted to manslaughter, if he had something to do with it, he'd only get a couple of years and a slap on the wrist. This was, as I said, a fake document, even signed Judge Justin F. Case. Just in case. But Nick didn't go for it. Though his debating over it convinced David he knew where she was. He would keep working on Nick, eventually spending over 40 grand on him, like paying off his probation so that, he wouldn't have to go back to jail where David couldn't keep trying to get information out of him. Whatever he could do, to be his bro. Now this, as you can imagine, started to wear on David, who at one point even started to contemplate torturing Nick to get the information out of him. Snip, snip, Nicky! It would be a full 2 years after Kelli Bordeaux disappeared that things would start to reveal themselves. See, David, he began to try something new. He got one of his workers to spy on Nick. In full view. Very unsubtly spy on Nick, so that Nick would become paranoid that the police were onto him. Then David served Nick with fake murder indictments. So Nick was freaking out at this stage, and then David gave him that fake plea agreement once again, and this time it worked. Nick took David out to the woods behind Froggy Bottoms. David took the search dog out to where Nick had brought them, and after 2 years, the police arrived at the scene, and Nick finally told them what happened.
As I understand it, you decided to do the right thing. Try to kind of tell us a little bit about what happened. You want to just give me a quick synopsis of what happened?
Well, where you want me to start from? The very beginning?
Well, let's do it like this, Nick. I think at this point, man, after all this time's passed, things are what they are, okay? I ain't mad with you. I weren't mad with you back then. I ain't mad with you now, okay?
I went and picked her up. We went back to the bar. Played pool, drank, sung karaoke. Everything was going good. Then I reckon somebody had told her about my sex offense thing, and I didn't know it, but that's when she started acting kind of funny towards me. And when she said she was ready to go home, I was talking with her, and I can't remember exactly what was said, but I know she said to me, "Not you child molester," or something like that, and I just snapped and zoned out and hit her, knocked her out. And I stuck her in the car and took her back to where I stayed at. And when she woke up, started screaming, and I hit her again, knocked her out again. And I can't really remember what happened in that time period. I know, she was dead. I stuck her in the car and took her down here.
Did y'all ever have any sex? No sex at all. So I won't find evidence of that. Okay. Will you want to walk us back here and show us kind of?
Well, I don't know exactly where it's at. I didn't find it. I was way up there. I thought it was way up there.
We'll let David show us then, I guess.
So when I looked down and I saw the lining of the sticks and the weeds, the 2 years of growth looked like 2 years of growth. So then I started probing, and I went down, and then all of a sudden I sunk down, and I got my dog, He alerted. I dug down.
That's what you found?
Right now on WRAL News, after 2 years, an Army private is found.
Detectives with the Fayetteville Police Department Homicide Unit recovered what we believe to be the remains of Private First Class Kelli Bordeaux.
Fayetteville police say they have found the body of missing Fort Bragg soldier Kelli Bordeaux. The man police have considered a possible suspect for the past 2 years. Nicholas Holbert is now in jail charged with her murder. This morning we are learning a lot more about the men who assisted police in bringing this case to a close.
The Marshburn Investigation Agency says they were never hired by Bordeaux's family. They were never paid for any of their work. They just simply had a strong interest in this case and wanted to help the family find their daughter.
I was happy to be able to find her, get to know somebody so well that you just about can read, hey, you know, he wants to say something, he wants to talk. I just asked him, were you ready to tell me, did you do something to Kelli? And he said yes.
A year later, and facing the death penalty, Nick Holbert pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison.
Mr. Holbert, could you look at me for a minute? Please. I don't understand. How? You could take a beautiful young girl for pretty much no reason and beat the life right out of her.
An unusual case in that it kind of required somebody working, outside the law, using unorthodox techniques that police couldn't use to solve it. Becoming Nicholas's friend for months, working on him, tricking him into finally revealing the truth. What a guy, fair play to him, honestly. Still though, I don't think anybody would have cried if he had, snip, snip, Nicky! Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Mike out.